What's up, my comic comrades? Villains Month is now in full swing, and today we're putting the spotlight on one of the most popular villains in all of comics, Lex Luthor. It's actually pretty surprising that we haven't given him a History of episode already, but there's no better time to do that than Villains Month. Today's episode is also sponsored by our good friends Raid Shadow Legends. Raid is easily one of the best collection RPG mobile games ever created, and we're not alone in thinking that. A big reason for that is because Raid has something for everyone. It's 100% free to play, has amazing graphics, strategic gameplay, PvP battles in the arena, over 400 champions from 16 different factions for you to collect and customize, and they're constantly updating and adding to the game. I know I've said it before, but my favorite champion has to be Kale from the Dark Elves. Once you level up his power sets and rank, he's a freaking beast. You definitely want to add him to your roster if possible. Raid also just recently added several new features like Faction Wars, where you could build teams of champions to battle new bosses for new rewards and artifacts. They have more updates with even more new content coming over the next 6 months as well, like a tag team arena and a new clan boss and more. And if you're new to Raid, there's a great reward program for new players, where you get a different daily login reward for the first 90 days, including several new epic champions. I'm telling you, if you haven't already, you want to jump in on Raid Shadow Legends. But again, it's not just us saying that. In fact, with more than 300,000 reviews now, Raid still has almost a perfect score on the Play Store. Go to the video description now, click on one of our Raid links to download the game for free, and you'll instantly get 50,000 silver with your download and a free epic champion within a week as part of the new player program. Then once you're up and running, come join our clan, Variant Nation. Good luck, and we'll see you there. With that covered, Lex Luthor is right there with the Joker as one of the most popular villains DC has to offer. To that point, you would be hard-pressed to find even a general superhero fan who didn't know at least one thing about Lex Luthor. That being the case, let's break down his comic book history, shall we? Lex Luthor was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster and made his debut in Action Comics 23 in April of 1940. Like most comic book characters, Lex is a very different character now from when he was originally created. When he was first introduced in the 40s, he was a mad scientist and Superman would often stop his master plans. He also wasn't bald originally, he had a full head of red hair, all Wally West style. Then over the years, like any fictional character, Lex evolved and became deeper and a lot more of a complex character. He ultimately evolved into a very wealthy, bald, corrupt businessman, as well as a philanthropist and an ingenious engineer living in Metropolis. He also became one of the most intelligent humans in the world, as well as an extremely popular public figure running and owning LexCorp. And of course, his #1 goal in life is to rid the world of Superman, as let's just say he's not too fond of an alien being the beacon of hope for mankind, and would much rather himself be that beacon. In any case, that's who Lex is, so now let's take a look at his comic book origin. As I said a minute ago, the first time we ever saw Lex was in Action Comics issue 23. And in this first story, Lex is depicted as an evil genius and is only referred to by his last name, Luthor. That's right, we didn't even know what his first name was when he first appeared. We also find out in this issue that he lives in a flying city that is held up by a gigantic blimp. It's here he tries to start a war between two European nations. So of course, when Lois Lane and Clark get wind of this, they start to investigate, which ends up with Lois being kidnapped. Of course, Clark has to save Lois, meaning as the saying goes, this is a job for Superman. So ditching his suit and fedora and putting on his red trunks and cape, Superman goes to save Lois. This inevitably leads to a confrontation with Luthor. And when he finds Lois and Luthor, Superman asks, "What sort of creature are you?" Luthor replies, "Just an ordinary man, but with a brain of a super genius, with scientific miracles at my fingertips." And he's preparing to make himself Supreme Master of the world. Ooh. His plan is to put the nations of Earth at war with one another so that he could step in and assume charge. Luthor then proceeds to shoot the Man of Steel using a powerful green ray. But of course, this doesn't work, and Superman defeats him, with Luthor seemingly dying when he is left on his crashing blimp and city at the end of the comic. But when 1960 rolled around, Luthor was revamped and given an origin story in Adventure Comics issue 271. The story takes place when both Superman and Lex Luthor were teenagers. Lex is a young scientist who lives in Smallville. In fact, Superman was called Superboy at the time because, well, he wasn't a man yet. At the beginning of the story, a kryptonite meteor lands on Earth right next to Superboy. Of course, this weakens him and puts him in incredible pain. So Lex uses a bulldozer to push the meteor off a cliff into quicksand, saving him. Clark says to Lex, "I owe you my life. What's your name?" Lex replies, "Lex Luthor. It's nice to meet you, Superboy. It's about the most thrilling thing that's ever happened to me." And the two became best friends. Lex then takes Superboy to his lab and shows him he has pictures of Superboy and trophies of him everywhere, saying, "I have hero worshipped you for years. To me, you're the greatest boy in the world," which, by today's standards, is just a little bit weird and creepy, but hey, it was the 60s. Anyway, seeing all the scientific lab gadgets, Superboy gets an idea and says, "I'll be right back." He then returns giving Lex rare unknown chemicals that Lex can use to experiment with, which Superboy burrowed out of the ground at super speed. Weeks later, while trying to create a kryptonite antidote which will protect Superboy from kryptonite, a fire started in Luthor's lab. So Superboy arrived and blew out the fire with his super breath. But when he went to go check on Lex, Lex says, "You rat, your puff of super breath blew an acid bottle against my experiments. They broke their contents and destroyed the formula for my greatest discovery. Not only that, the gas fumes made my hair fall out and now I'm bald." And that, my friends, is how Lex became bald. Just like me. Superboy is like, "But it was an accident. I didn't mean to." Luthor replies, "Don't lie. You were just jealous of my genius. So you deliberately broke those bottles and destroyed my formula, which was the result of thousands of experiments you knew I could never duplicate again." And this, my friends, is the beginning of Lex's hate for Superman. After this, Lex destroys all the trophies and pictures he has of Superboy, saying, "I hate him. How could I have ever worshipped that super rat?" He then says Superboy will regret the day he decided to steal the glory of Luthor. Later in the story, Lex would also try to kill Superboy with kryptonite, but Superboy was able to take the last few drops of the kryptonite antidote away from Lex to save him, marking the beginning of their ongoing rivalry. Now, I will say this wasn't the last time Lex Luthor's origin was revamped. We got his modern origin in the 6-issue miniseries, The Man of Steel. Lex Luthor was redesigned to look more like Donald Trump and Ted Turner and was given red hair once again. Additionally, in this take, Luthor came from abuse and poverty. When he was a teenager, he took out an insurance policy on his parents without them knowing, then proceeded to sabotage their brakes in their cars, causing their death. He then took the money and upon graduating from MIT, founded his own business, LexCorp, which became the dominant business of Metropolis. Essentially, in this take, he came from nothing and lied, stole, and killed until he made his way to the top. But of course, this wasn't the last revisit and change to his origin, but it is the last one I'm gonna mention because now it's time to move on to story arcs and publication history. As one would assume, Lex Luthor has appeared in countless storylines over the years, as he's one of the most important and significant villains to the DC Universe. So as always, I'm going to do my best to give you guys a solid summary. Like I mentioned earlier, in the Golden Age, Lex was very much your run-of-the-mill evil genius type of villain, whose plans were more often than not foiled by the Man of Steel. Then in the Silver Age of comics, he was revamped with a new origin that I just told you about in Adventure Comics issue 271. The Silver Age is what really gave us the classic Lex Luthor trait of him trying to kill Superman and enslave the Earth as his first step to dominating the universe. But let's fast forward to the Bronze Age, as that's where I personally think things get really interesting for Lex. After being defeated by Superman yet again, Lex Luthor is like, "Forget this crap, I'm going to retire from being a villain and live on Lexor for good." For those of you who don't know, Lexor is a planet under the Red Sun where Lex Luthor was worshipped as a hero. That's right, Luthor has his own planet where he's the king. That's a real thing. Google it. In any case, Superman eventually goes to Lexor to bring Luthor back to Earth because one of Luthor's machines was still active, which could cause massive destruction. But in the ensuing battle, Lex is like, "Nah dog, I'm staying here," and eventually reveals his battle armor for the first time. That's right, this is the first time we see Luthor's now iconic green and purple battlesuit, which made its debut in Action Comics issue 544. In any case, during Lex's fight with Superman, energy from his battlesuit accidentally overloads, which resulted in the deaths of Lexor and its people, including his son and wife. As Superman flies away after the explosion, he says how chilling it was to watch hopelessly as Luthor's uncontrollable hatred triggered his planet's destruction, a catastrophe that parallels the tragic demise of my planet Krypton. And of course, Luthor blames Superman for the death of his planet and his family because if Superman never came there to get him and fight him, this would have never happened. So Lex, in tears, looking at everything he's lost, says, "Until now, I always thought I hated you as much as anyone could hate anything. But I was wrong. Until today, I didn't even know the meaning of the word. I'm coming for you, Superman, and I have only just begun to hate." It's actually extremely chilling, and in a weird way, you feel bad for Lex, even though it's really all of his actions and hate that caused this in the first place. And the story ends with the caption saying, "The new Lex Luthor," as he plots his revenge against Superman once more. And I gotta say, when I think of Lex Luthor, this is the Lex Luthor I think of. And can I just say, it's a darn shame we haven't seen a live-action Lex in his battlesuit fighting Superman on the big screen. In the golden age of superhero movies we're in, how have we not gotten that yet? In any case, this all leads into the iconic Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline. In this story, Lex teams up with fellow Superman villain Brainiac, which by the way, is always an awesome team up. It wasn't their first team up, and it definitely wasn't their last. Anyway, Lex and Brainiac recruit an army of supervillains from all over the DC multiverse. Their intent is to take advantage of all this confusion the crisis has caused. But it ultimately becomes clear to them it's as much in their best interest to save the multiverse as it is for the heroes. So they don't wanna, but they do team up with Superman, Batman, and the rest of the heroes to save the DC universe. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, things pretty much changed for every DC hero and villain, and Lex was no exception. This is where we got his modern age take I told you about in Origins that took place in the Man of Steel miniseries, where he was modeled after Donald Trump and Ted Turner. By this time, we're in the 90s and Lex is as popular of a villain as ever. I mean, this is where we learn Lex Luthor is responsible for the creation of 3 other extremely popular and fan-loved Superman villains, who are Parasite, Bizarro, and Metallo. It's also during this modern era that Lex would become the President of the United States. But this is Lex we're talking about, so of course he was a corrupt president, like knowing about an alien invasion in advance, and didn't think it was important to alert the Justice League. Most notably though, people probably remember Lex as the president in the awesome Superman-Batman Public Enemy storyline, which also got an animated movie, and if you haven't watched it yet, you need to do yourself a favor and watch it. I believe it's available on the DC Universe streaming app, so go watch that. Of course, Lex wouldn't last long in office, as Batman captured a video confession of Luthor admitting that he traded Doomsday to Darkseid in return for weapons. So in total, Lex only served in office for less than 3 years. And of course, I have to at least mention Infinite Crisis, which would introduce us to Alexander Luthor Jr., the son of Earth 3's version of Luthor. It's pretty cool stuff, but I'll have to expand upon that in another episode. But skipping some stuff here and there because there's a whole lot of Lex in comics, we're gonna move on to the New 52. Initially in the New 52, Lex is a representative of the government and has been brought on by them to investigate and bring down the Kryptonian. But my 2 favorite story arcs that involve Lex in the New 52 are Superman Unchained and the Forever Evil storyline. And yet again in the Forever Evil storyline, Lex is shown to be the creator and evil father figure of Bizarro. But of course, more recently, as of the beginning of DC Rebirth, which takes place after the death of the New 52 Superman, Lex decides to take up the S and Red Cape, becoming the new protector of Metropolis. It doesn't last forever though, as the pre-New 52 Superman eventually shows up. Luthor also has a significant role in the Doomsday Clock storyline, and a massive role in Scott Snyder's Justice League title, as he's leading the Legion of Doom and spliced his DNA with the stuff that Perpetua was messing with, becoming Apex Lex, as he's been called. But that, my friends, leads us to powers and abilities. Lex Luthor is not a metahuman, meaning he doesn't have any superpowers. However, he's extremely intelligent, which is what makes him such a threat. In fact, former Chief Creative Officer of DC Comics, Jeff Johns, has stated that Lex Luthor is the smartest man in the DC universe. He possesses anywhere from a 7th to 9th level intellect, making him the smartest human being on Earth. Which is crazy considering you have characters like Batman and Mr. Terrific who are insanely intelligent as well. Being that smart, if he wanted to, he could turn the world into a utopia free of illness and crime. But his obsession to beat Superman gets in the way of that. And because of his level of genius, Lex has some of the best weapons and pieces of equipment the world has ever seen. His most iconic weapon being his numerous variations of his battlesuit. In summary, Lex's power is being the smartest man on Earth. But now it's time for some reading recommendations. Check out Forever Evil, Lex Luthor the Unauthorized Biography, the Man of Steel miniseries, Superman Batman Public Enemies, and Scott Snyder's current Justice League title. That should be enough to get all of you started. First up for the week of the 9th, we have Powers of 10, Issue 6. The revelatory Tales of Mutant Kind's fall comes to a conclusion that will lay the groundwork for the X-Men stories for years to come. Now we have Joker Harley Criminal Sanity Issue 1. This is a brand new DC Black Label book that follows Harley during her forensic psychiatrist days. Here we have Spawn Issue 301. Putting it simply, this is the record-breaking issue for the longest-running creator-owned title that puts Spawn in a whole new direction. And finally, we have the Joker Year of the Villain Issue 1. This is a Joker story co-written by horror legend John Carpenter. I don't know about you, but I definitely want to see what the creator of Mike Myers is going to do with the Joker. And that's going to bring another episode of Variant to a close, but if you like this video, be sure to check the video right here. And if you like all of our videos, be sure to subscribe. But I'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.